Welcome to Books in 10. Remember, we're raffling an iPhone when we reach 10,000 subscribers. Like, subscribe, and journey with us into this fantastic book. Share with your friends, and let's create the biggest book community on YouTube together. Oh, there's a link to purchase the book in the pinned comments. Enjoy. We are accepting book requests to create content within the camper. Books in 10 suggest the best titles in the comments. Now let's go. Today, we're diving deep into the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. You might be wondering, why would a Roman emperor's personal diary from almost 2,000 years ago be relevant to you today? Well, these aren't just any old scribbles. They're packed with surprisingly applicable wisdom.
It's fascinating how these private reflections offer a window into timeless human struggles, how to deal with stress, make tough choices, and find meaning in a chaotic world, things we all still grapple with today, right?
Absolutely. So for those who might not be familiar with him, who is this philosopher emperor?
Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome from 161 to 180 AD, part of a period known as the Five Good Emperors. Think of him as the leader of the most powerful empire in the world, dealing with wars, rebellions, and all sorts of political drama. And yet, in his spare time, he was writing these deeply personal reflections on Stoic philosophy.
It's almost like finding out a world leader today is secretly writing poetry or keeping a philosophy blog.
Exactly. And what's remarkable is that he wasn't writing these for an audience. It wasn't a PR stunt for the Roman Empire. It was his own personal journey to make sense of life, to wrestle with his own flaws, and to strive for a life of virtue.
So we're essentially getting a raw, unfiltered look into the mind of a Roman emperor trying to be a better person. That's kind of amazing. What were some of the things he struggled with?
Well, one of the central tenets of Stoicism, and something Aurelius constantly reflects on, is the idea of living in accordance with nature. This isn't about becoming a hermit or rejecting modern life. It's about understanding the rational order of the universe and aligning your actions with it.
Okay, but what does that actually mean for someone like me living in the 21st century? I'm dealing with deadlines, traffic jams, and trying to figure out what to make for dinner. How does this ancient philosophy apply to that?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of why Aurelius is still relevant today. Think about a stressful situation you might face, like being stuck in traffic. Do you get frustrated, angry, maybe start honking your horn? That's a natural reaction, but Stoicism would say that the traffic jam itself isn't the problem. It's your judgment about it that causes the suffering.
So it's not about pretending things aren't stressful, but about changing how we react to them.
Precisely. Living in accordance with nature means accepting what's beyond your control, like that traffic jam, and focusing on what you can control, your attitude, your thoughts, your actions.
So instead of raging at the universe, I should just accept the traffic. That seems a little passive, doesn't it?
It's not about passivity, but about choosing your battles wisely. Aurelius wouldn't deny the frustration of being stuck in traffic, but he would remind you that getting angry won't make the cars move any faster. Instead, you can use that time to practice patience, maybe listen to a podcast, wink, wink, or just observe your surroundings with a sense of detachment.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like shifting your focus from what you can't change to what you can. Okay, so we've got this concept of living in accordance with nature. What other big Stoic ideas pop up in the Meditations?
Another core idea is the emphasis on virtue as the only true good. Stoicism doesn't place much value on wealth, fame, or pleasure. Those are all fleeting and external. True happiness, according to Aurelius, comes from inner strength, justice, and wisdom.
So it's not about denying ourselves pleasure, but about understanding that lasting happiness doesn't come from those external things.
Exactly. And this is where we see Aurelius's struggles come in. Imagine being an emperor surrounded by wealth and luxury, constantly being told how great you are.
Easy to get caught up in all that, right?
Absolutely. But Aurelius constantly reminds himself that true fulfillment comes from living a virtuous life, not from the trappings of power. He writes things like, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." It's a call to action, a reminder to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
I love that. It's like he's saying, stop overthinking it, just be a good person. Barley. That's something we can all relate to, right?
Yeah.
But how did this play out in his real life? Was he actually a good emperor?
Well, that's a matter of historical debate. But what's fascinating is that Aurelius doesn't shy away from his own flaws and struggles in the Meditations. He writes about his anger, his impatience, his desire for recognition.
So he's not portraying himself as some perfect Stoic sage.
Not at all. He's incredibly human, which is what makes him so relatable. And it's in those moments of vulnerability that we see the true heart of Stoicism. It's not about being perfect, but about striving for self-improvement. about recognizing our shortcomings, and about constantly trying to be a little bit better each day.
I think that's something a lot of us can relate to, that constant struggle to be better. It's encouraging to see that even an emperor was wrestling with these same human issues.
Okay, so we've got this idea of living in accordance with nature, focusing on virtue, and accepting what we can't control. Is there a specific example from the meditations that really brings these ideas to life?
One that comes to mind is his advice on dealing with anger and frustration. Imagine someone cutting you off in traffic or being rude to you in line at the store. A natural reaction might be anger,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I know, I've been there.
But Aurelius suggests a surprising approach. Think of that person as having bad breath or body odor. It's a funny image, but it's meant to shift your perspective.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that help?
Well, instead of getting angry at the person, you're encouraged to think, okay, this person might just be having a bad day, or maybe they have some underlying issues that are causing them to act this way. It's about cultivating compassion and recognizing that everyone is fighting their own battles. So it's about choosing empathy over anger, even when someone is being a jerk.
Exactly. It's not about condoning bad behavior, but about recognizing that our reactions are ultimately our own choice. We can choose to let someone else's negativity ruin our day, or we can choose to maintain our own inner peace and respond with compassion.
That's a powerful idea. It's almost like taking back control of your own emotional state rather than letting external events dictate it. Okay, so we've got this idea of living in accordance with nature, focusing on virtue, and choosing our responses wisely. But Marcus Aurelius also faced some truly difficult challenges in his life, right?
Absolutely. He experienced war, plague, betrayal, and even the loss of several children.
How did his Stoic philosophy help him cope with those kinds of tragedies?
Well, one of the most profound themes in the Meditations is his reflection on death. He repeatedly reminds himself that death is a natural part of life, an inevitable end that we all must face. He writes, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." It's a powerful reminder to live each day to the fullest, to appreciate the preciousness of life, and to focus on making a positive impact while we still can.
It's almost like he's saying, don't waste time on trivial things, on drama, on holding grudges. Focus on what truly matters, on being a good person, on making a difference.
Exactly. And that's where we see the paradoxical nature of Aurelius's life. Here's this philosopher who values peace and tranquility, yet he's leading armies into battle, dealing with political rivals, and facing personal
It's
tragedies.
like his life was a constant test of his Stoic principles. How did you reconcile those seemingly contradictory roles?
Well, the Meditations doesn't offer easy answers. It's more about his process of grappling with those contradictions, of trying to live up to his ideals in a world that often seems to resist them.
It's interesting that you point out the lack of easy answers. So much of self-help today is about quick fixes and simple solutions. But Aurelius seems to be wrestling with deeper, more complex issues.
Absolutely. And that's what makes him so relatable. He's not offering some magical formula for happiness, but rather a way of thinking, a framework for approaching life's challenges with wisdom, courage, and a sense of perspective.
Okay, so we've talked about these big Stoic ideas. Living in accordance with nature, focusing on virtue, accepting what we can't control, and reflecting on death. But there's also this fascinating personal layer to the meditations. He talks about his relationship with his tutor, Fronto. Tell me more about that.
Fronto was a renowned orator, a master of rhetoric. He was hired to teach Aurelius how to speak and write persuasively, essential skills for a future emperor.
So it was more than just a typical student-teacher relationship.
Much more. They developed a deep bond that went beyond the classroom. We get glimpses of this through the letters they exchanged, which reveal a genuine affection and respect for each other.
It's kind of like a bromance from ancient Rome.
You could say that. And what's interesting is that their relationship evolved as Aurelius grew older and delved deeper into philosophy.
Did Fronto approve of his students' philosophical pursuits?
There's a sense of melancholy in some of Fronto's later letters, as if he recognized that Aurelius was moving beyond his sphere of influence, embracing a way of thinking that was different from his own.
It's almost like a proud parent watching their child go off to college, knowing that their relationship will never be quite the same.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that even the closest of relationships are subject to change and growth.
It's a reminder that growth and change are inevitable, and that even the closest of relationships can transform over time.
Precisely. And it's a testament to the depth of their connection that they were able to navigate these shifts with grace and understanding, recognizing that personal growth and intellectual exploration sometimes lead to a redefinition of even the most cherished bonds.
So we've talked about Aurelius's Stoic principles and his relationship with Fronto. But what about his paradoxical life as both a philosopher and an emperor? How did those two roles clash?
One of the most compelling aspects of the Meditations is how Aurelius grapples with this very tension. He frequently reflects on the challenges of remaining calm and composed amidst the chaos of his life, constantly reminding himself of the Stoic principles he holds dear.
It's almost like we're witnessing his internal struggle to embody those principles in the face of immense pressure and responsibility.
You could say that it's a testament to his commitment to self-improvement and his unwavering dedication to living a virtuous life, even in the most demanding of circumstances.
It makes him seem very human, very relatable. We all struggle to live up to our ideals, to make the right choices when faced with difficult situations.
Absolutely. And the Meditations isn't a guidebook to perfection, but rather a window into the mind of someone who is constantly striving to be better, to align his actions with his values even when it was hard.
I'm curious, though, about this idea of living in accordance with nature. It's a core Stoic principle, but it can feel a bit abstract. How did Aurelius actually apply that to his role as emperor?
That's a great question. It's one of those phrases that can seem a bit cryptic, but it's actually quite profound. For the Stoics, living in accordance with nature wasn't about literally going back to nature and living in the woods. It was about aligning your life with the rational order of the universe.
So it's more about understanding the bigger picture and finding your place within it.
Exactly. The Stoics believe that the universe is governed by a rational principle, a kind of divine logos, and that everything that happens is part of a larger interconnected web. They saw nature as inherently rational and ordered, and they believed that human beings, as rational beings, should strive to live in harmony with this order.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this connects to Aurelius's role as emperor. He couldn't control everything that happened in the empire, but he could control his own responses, his own actions.
Precisely. For Aurelius, living in accordance with nature meant accepting the responsibilities that came with his position, making decisions based on reason and justice, and striving to create a more harmonious and just society.
So it wasn't about passivity or simply going with the flow. It's about actively engaging with life, striving to make wise choices, and living according to our highest principles.
Precisely. It's about finding a balance between acceptance and action, recognizing our limitations while also striving to live in a way that contributes to the greater good.
It's a fascinating concept, and I think it's one that resonates deeply with many people today, especially as we grapple with a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
Absolutely. It's a philosophy that offers a sense of grounding and purpose, reminding us that we are part of something larger than ourselves and that we have the power to choose our responses to life's inevitable challenges.
You mentioned earlier that Aurelius experienced some profound personal tragedies, including the loss of several children. How did his Stoic philosophy inform his approach to grief and loss?
That's a really important question, and it gets to the heart of how Stoicism can offer solace even in the darkest of times. There's a passage in the Meditations where Aurelius reflects on the death of a loved one, writing, "Thou hast embarked, thou hast made the voyage, thou art come to shore, get out. If into another life there is God there also. If into a state of insensibility thou shalt cease to be bothered by pains and pleasures."
It's a stark reminder that death is a natural part of life, an inevitability that we all must face. But there's also a sense of acceptance, a recognition that even in death, there is a kind of peace.
Exactly. Stoicism doesn't deny the pain of grief, but it offers a framework for processing those emotions in a healthy way. It encourages us to accept what's beyond our control, in this case, death, and to focus on what we can control: our thoughts, our attitudes, and our actions.
So instead of dwelling on the loss, we should focus on honoring the memory of the person who's passed away and on living our own lives to the fullest.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. And I think that's at the heart of Aurelius' message. He's reminding us that even in the face of death, there is beauty, there is meaning, there's a reason to keep going.
It's a message that feels incredibly relevant today, especially as we navigate a world that's often uncomfortable with talking about death or expressing grief openly.
Absolutely. Stoicism offers a different perspective, one that encourages us to confront death with courage, to accept its inevitability, and to find solace in the knowledge that even in death we are part of the grand tapestry of life. One of the things I find most intriguing about the Meditations is the way Aurelius grapples with the concept of fame and legacy. He was an emperor, a man who wielded immense power and influence. Yet in his personal reflections, he seems to view fame and recognition with a sense of detachment, even skepticism.
It's almost paradoxical, isn't it? Here's this man who held one of the most powerful positions in the world, yet he seemed to have recognized the ultimate insignificance of worldly achievements in the grand scheme of things. There's a passage where he writes, "Everything fades so quickly, turns into legend, and soon oblivion covers it." It's like he's deliberately trying to humble himself to put his own life and accomplishments into perspective.
Exactly. And it's a reminder to all of us, regardless of our position or status, that we are but small players in a vast cosmic drama. Our individual lives are fleeting, and our accomplishments, however impressive they may seem in the moment, will eventually fade into the mists of time.
So what's the point then? If everything is impermanent, well, why bother striving for anything?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I think for Aurelius, the answer lies in focusing on what truly matters. Living a virtuous life, aligning our actions with our principles, and contributing to the greater good.
It's about finding meaning and purpose in the present moment, rather than seeking validation from external sources or clinging to the illusion of lasting fame.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that our legacy isn't about what we achieve, but about who we are and how we choose to live our lives.
There's a passage where Aurelius writes, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." It's like he's saying that true fulfillment lies in living a life guided by our own inner compass, not by the fickle winds of public opinion.
Exactly. And it's a message that feels incredibly liberating. It frees us from the need for external validation and empowers us to act with integrity and authenticity, knowing that we are living in accordance with our highest principles.
It's a powerful antidote to the pressure we often feel to chase after success, recognition, and external validation.
Absolutely. Aurelius is reminding us that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, from living a life that's aligned with our values, our purpose, and our deepest aspirations.
Okay, so we've got this idea of detaching from the pursuit of fame and focusing on what truly matters: virtue, purpose, and inner peace. But how does that translate into practical everyday actions? What does it actually look like to live a stoic life in the 21st century?
That's a great question, and I think one of the most valuable aspects of the Meditations is its practicality. Aurelius wasn't just a philosopher, he was an emperor who had to deal with the pressures of leadership, the complexities of human relationships, and the inevitable ups and downs of life. And his writings reflect his attempts to apply Stoic principles to the messy reality of his own existence.
So it's not just about abstract ideas, but about finding ways to actually live those principles in our daily lives.
Exactly. And one of the key practices Aurelius emphasizes is that of self-reflection. He writes, "The unexamined life is not worth living." It's a call to take some time each day to quiet our minds, to examine our thoughts and actions, and to ask ourselves, am I living in accordance with my values? Am I making choices that are conducive to my well-being and to the well-being of others?
It's like a mental checkup, a way to ensure that we're staying aligned with our best selves and making choices that are in harmony with our principles.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be a lengthy or complicated process. Even a few minutes of quiet reflection each day can make a world of difference.
Another key practice is that of focusing on what we can control. Aurelius writes, "There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will."
It's a reminder that we can't control external events, the actions of others, or the inevitable ups and downs of life. But we can control our own thoughts, our own actions, and our own responses to the world around us.
It's about recognizing our own agency, our ability to choose our attitude, our perspective, and our actions, even in the face of challenging circumstances.
Absolutely. And it's a message that feels incredibly empowering. It reminds us that we're not victims of circumstance, but rather co-creators of our own reality.
So how can we apply this principle in a practical way? What are some examples of things we can control versus things we can't?
Well, think about a situation like getting stuck in traffic. You can't control the traffic jam itself, but you can control your reaction to it. You can choose to get angry and frustrated, or you can choose to accept the situation and use that time productively. Maybe listen to a podcast, catch up on emails, or simply practice mindfulness.
It's like shifting our focus from what's outside of our control to what's within our control.
Exactly. And it's a practice that takes time and effort, but it can be incredibly liberating. It allows us to let go of the things we can't change and to focus on what we can influence. our own thoughts, our own actions, and our own responses to the world around us.
One of the things that initially drew me to Stoicism was this idea of finding peace amidst chaos. I think a lot of people today are looking for ways to manage stress, to find a sense of calm in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and unpredictable.
I think that's a really important point, and it gets to the heart of why Stoicism is experiencing a resurgence in popularity today. We live in a world that's constantly bombarding us with information, with demands, with distractions, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed, anxious, and out of control.
So how can Stoicism help us navigate that kind of environment? How can we find that sense of inner peace amidst the chaos?
Well, one of the key practices that Aurelius emphasizes is that of mindfulness. He writes, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." It's a reminder that we have a choice.
Hmm?
We can get caught up in the whirlwind of external events, or we can cultivate a sense of inner stillness, a sanctuary within ourselves where we can find peace and clarity.
It's like creating a safe space within our own minds, a place where we can detach from the external chaos and reconnect with our own inner wisdom.
Exactly. And it's a practice that takes time and effort, but it's incredibly valuable. Mindfulness allows us to become more aware of our thoughts, our emotions, and our reactions to the world around us. And with that awareness comes the ability to choose our responses more consciously and to cultivate a greater sense of peace and equanimity.
Okay, so mindfulness is key. What other Stoic practices can help us manage stress and cultivate inner peace?
Another important practice is that of negative visualization. It might sound counterintuitive, but it's a powerful technique for developing resilience and appreciation for what we have.
Negative visualization. That sounds a bit gloomy.
I know it sounds a bit strange at first, but it's about taking some time each day to contemplate the potential loss of things we value: our health, our loved ones, our possessions, even our own lives.
Okay, so why would we want to do that? Doesn't that just make us more anxious?
Actually, it has the opposite effect. By contemplating the potential loss of these things, we develop a deeper appreciation for them in the present moment. We become more mindful of their value, and we're less likely to take them for granted.
So it's like a mental exercise in gratitude, a way of reminding ourselves of how fortunate we are.
Exactly. And it also helps us to develop resilience. By contemplating potential setbacks, we mentally prepare ourselves for the possibility of loss or hardship. And when those challenges inevitably arise, we're less likely to be blindsided or overwhelmed by them.
It's almost like building up our mental immunity to stress and adversity.
You could say that. It's about recognizing that life is full of ups and downs, and that by preparing ourselves mentally and emotionally, we can navigate those challenges with greater grace, resilience, and a sense of perspective.
One of the things I've always admired about Stoicism is its emphasis on virtue and character. It seems like in our modern world, we often prioritize external achievements, success, status, wealth. But Stoicism reminds us that what truly matters is our inner character, our values, and how we choose to live our lives.
That's a really important point, and it's one of the things that makes Stoicism so relevant today. In a world that often feels obsessed with superficiality and external validation, Stoicism offers a different perspective, one that values integrity, compassion, wisdom, and a commitment to living in accordance with our highest principles.
So how can we cultivate those virtues in our own lives? What does it actually look like to live a virtuous life in the 21st century?
Well, for Aurelius, living a virtuous life meant aligning his actions with the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
Okay, so those are pretty big concepts. How do they translate into everyday actions?
Well, wisdom involves seeking knowledge, understanding, and insight. It's about making decisions based on careful consideration, reason, and a balanced perspective.
So it's not just about being smart, but about making wise choices.
Exactly. It's about using our intelligence to make decisions that are in harmony with our values, our goals, and the greater good.
Okay, what about justice? What does that look like in practice?
Justice involves fairness, honesty, and a commitment to treating others with respect and dignity. It's about recognizing the inherent worth of all beings and striving to create a more just and equitable society.
So it's not just about following the law, but about acting in a way that's fair and ethical.
Exactly. It's about living in accordance with our highest principles, even when it's difficult or inconvenient.
Okay, so we've got wisdom and justice. What about courage?
Courage involves facing our fears, standing up for what's right, and persevering in the face of challenges. It's about recognizing that life is full of obstacles, but that we have the inner strength to overcome them.
So it's not about being fearless, but about acting in spite of our fears.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that fear is a natural human emotion, but that we don't have to let it paralyze us or prevent us from living our lives to the fullest.
Okay, and finally, what about temperance?
Temperance involves self-control, moderation, and balance. It's about recognizing our own limitations, avoiding excesses, and making choices that are conducive to our overall well-being.
So it's about finding a healthy balance in all areas of our lives.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that too much of a good thing can be harmful, and that true happiness and fulfillment come from living a life that's balanced, harmonious, and aligned with our values.
One of the things that I've always struggled with is the idea of letting go of things that are outside of my control. It's easy to get caught up in worrying about things I can't change, like the actions of others, the weather, or the state of the world.
I think that's a really common struggle, and it's one that Aurelius addressed directly in the Meditations. He writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's a powerful reminder that we have a choice. We can choose to be ruled by our anxieties and fears, or we can choose to focus on what we can control: our own thoughts, our own actions, and our own responses to the world around us.
It's a perspective that feels incredibly liberating. It reminds us that we're not victims of circumstance, but rather co-creators of our own reality. But it's also a practice, something that requires ongoing effort and self-awareness.
Absolutely. It's not about achieving some kind of perfect state of detachment, but rather about recognizing when we're getting caught up in things we can't control and gently redirecting our attention back to what we can influence: our own thoughts, our own actions, and our own responses to the world around us.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How can we cultivate that sense of detachment and focus on what's within our control?
Well, one helpful technique is to ask ourselves, is this something I can directly influence? If the answer is yes, then we can take action. If the answer is no, then we can practice acceptance, letting go of the need to control or change the situation.
So it's about becoming more discerning, about choosing our battles wisely, and about recognizing that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply let go.
Exactly. It's about surrendering to what is, accepting the things we can't change, and focusing our energy on what we can influence: our own thoughts, our own actions, and our own responses to the world around us.
One of the things I appreciate about Stoicism is its focus on living in the present moment. I think a lot of us get caught up in dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, but Stoicism reminds us that the only moment we truly have is now.
That's a really important point, and it's one that Aurelius emphasizes repeatedly in the Meditations. He writes, "Remember that all is opinion, and opinion depends on you."
Okay, so how does that connect to living in the present moment?
Well, if our opinions shape our reality, then by choosing to focus on the present moment, we're essentially choosing to create a more positive and fulfilling experience for ourselves.
It's like we're taking control of the narrative of our own lives by choosing where we direct our attention.
Exactly. And it's a practice that takes time and effort, but it can be incredibly transformative. By cultivating a habit of mindfulness, of being fully present in each moment, we can reduce stress, increase our enjoyment of life, and develop a deeper appreciation for the beauty and wonder that surrounds us.
So how can we cultivate this habit of mindfulness? What are some practical tips for bringing our attention back to the present moment when we find our minds wandering?
Well, one simple but powerful technique is to focus on our senses. What do you see, hear, smell, taste, and feel right now?
Let's see. I see the microphone in front of me. I hear the gentle hum of the air conditioner. I smell the faint scent of coffee.
Exactly. By bringing our attention to our senses, we ground ourselves in the present moment and interrupt the endless stream of thoughts that often pull us away from the here and now.
It's like a mental reset button, a way of bringing our focus back to the present moment and breaking free from the cycle of worry and rumination.
Exactly. And the more we practice this, the easier it becomes to cultivate a sense of presence and peace in our daily lives.
One of the things that I've always found challenging about self-improvement is the feeling that I need to be perfect. It's like I set these high standards for myself, and then I get discouraged when I inevitably fall short.
I think that's a really common experience, and it's one that Stoicism addresses directly. Aurelius writes, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love."
It's a reminder that we are already whole and complete, just as we are, and that our worthiness isn't contingent upon achieving some unattainable ideal of perfection.
Exactly. And it's about embracing the journey of self-improvement with a sense of compassion and self-acceptance. We're all works in progress, and that's okay. The key is to keep striving to be a little bit better each day, to learn from our mistakes, and to celebrate our successes along the way.
So it's not about being perfect, but about embracing the process of becoming.
Absolutely. And it's a journey that's filled with challenges, setbacks, and triumphs. But it's a journey that's ultimately worth taking, for it leads to greater self-awareness, resilience, and fulfillment.
One of the things that I've always admired about Stoicism is its emphasis on living in accordance with nature. But I think in our modern world, it can be easy to feel disconnected from nature. We spend so much time indoors, staring at screens, caught up in the hustle and bustle of daily life. How can we reconnect with nature and bring this Stoic principle into our 21st century lives?
That's a great question, and it's one that I think Aurelius would have appreciated. Remember, for the Stoics, living in accordance with nature wasn't about literally going back to the wilderness. It was about aligning our lives with the rational order of the universe, recognizing our place in the grand scheme of things, and living in a way that's harmonious with the natural world.
So how can we do that when we're surrounded by concrete, traffic, and technology?
Well, I think there are a few key things we can do. First, we can make a conscious effort to spend more time in nature, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. Take a walk in the park, sit under a tree, listen to the birds singing.
It's about reminding ourselves that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, that we're connected to the natural world.
Exactly. And even small doses of nature can have a profound impact on our well-being. Studies have shown that spending time in nature can reduce stress, improve mood, boost creativity, and enhance our overall sense of well-being.
Okay, so spending time in nature is key. What else can we do?
Another thing we can do is to cultivate a sense of awe and wonder at the natural world. Look up at the stars at night, marvel at the complexity of a flower, appreciate the beauty of a sunset.
It's like reawakening our childlike sense of curiosity and appreciation for the world around us.
Exactly. And that sense of awe and wonder can help us to connect with something larger than ourselves, to feel a sense of gratitude for the beauty and complexity of life.
Okay, so spending time in nature and cultivating a sense of awe and wonder are important. What else can we do to bring this Stoic principle of living in accordance with nature into our modern lives?
Well, I think it's also about making choices that are in harmony with the natural world. That might involve things like choosing sustainable products, reducing our environmental impact, or supporting organizations that are working to protect the planet.
So it's not just about our individual actions, but also about our collective responsibility to care for the environment.
Absolutely. The Stoics recognize that we're all interconnected, that our actions have an impact on the world around us. And by making choices that are aligned with nature, we can contribute to creating a more sustainable and harmonious world for all beings.
You know, one of the things that I find most inspiring about Marcus Aurelius is his commitment to self-improvement. Even as emperor, he was constantly striving to be better, to learn, to grow.
It's a testament to his character, isn't it? He could have easily rested on his laurels, indulged in the trappings of power, but instead he chose to use his position to serve others and to strive for a life of virtue and wisdom.
And it's a reminder to all of us that no matter our station in life, no matter our circumstances, we can all choose to embrace the journey of self-improvement.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, that we all have the potential for growth and transformation. And it's a journey that's ultimately worth taking, for it leads to greater self-awareness, resilience, and fulfillment.
So what are some practical steps we can take to cultivate a habit of self-improvement?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to set aside some time each day for reflection. Whether it's through journaling, meditation, or simply quiet contemplation, create a space for yourself to examine your thoughts, your actions, and your progress toward your goals.
It's like a mental checkup, a way to ensure that we're staying aligned with our values and making choices that are conducive to our overall well-being.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be a lengthy or complicated process. Even a few minutes of quiet reflection each day can make a world of difference.
Okay, so reflection is key. What else can we do?
Another important step is to identify areas where we want to grow. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our values? What are our goals? Once we have a clear understanding of who we are and where we want to go, we can start to develop a plan for getting there.
So it's about having a vision for ourselves, a sense of direction, and a roadmap for achieving our goals.
Exactly. And it's important to be patient and compassionate with ourselves along the way. Self-improvement isn't about achieving perfection overnight, but about making small, incremental changes over time.
It's about embracing the journey of becoming, rather than focusing solely on the destination.
Absolutely. And it's a journey that's filled with challenges, setbacks, and triumphs. But it's a journey that's ultimately worth taking, for it leads to greater self-awareness, resilience, and fulfillment.
One of the things that I've always found challenging about self-improvement is the fear of failure. It's like I'm so afraid of making mistakes that I sometimes hold myself back from taking risks or trying new things.
I think that's a really common fear, and it's one that Stoicism can help us to overcome. Aurelius writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way."
That's a powerful quote. It's like he's saying that our challenges, our obstacles, our very fears can become the fuel for our growth.
Exactly. Stoicism teaches us that we can learn and grow from our mistakes, that failure is not the opposite of success, but rather a stepping stone along the path.
So it's about reframing our perspective on failure, seeing it not as something to be feared, but as an opportunity for learning and growth.
Absolutely. And it's about developing a growth mindset, a belief that we can continue to learn and evolve throughout our lives.
One of the things I appreciate about the Meditations is that it's not just a book about Stoicism. It's also a deeply personal reflection on the human experience. Aurelius writes about his struggles with anger, his fears, his doubts, his joys, his sorrows. It's like we're getting a glimpse into the heart and mind of a man who is trying to figure out how to live a good life, just like the rest of us.
That's one of the things that makes the meditations so enduring and relatable. It's not a theoretical treatise on philosophy, but a raw and honest account of one man's journey to make sense of life, to find meaning and purpose, and to navigate the inevitable challenges and triumphs of being human.
And it's a reminder that even the most powerful figures in history, even emperors, were human beings who wrestled with the same doubts, fears, and aspirations that we all face.
Absolutely. And it's in that shared humanity that we find connection, inspiration, and a sense of hope. We realize that we're not alone in our struggles, that there's a long tradition of wisdom and guidance that we can draw upon, and that we all have the potential to live lives of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment.
One of the themes that keeps recurring in the Meditations is the importance of living in accordance with nature. What does that actually mean in practice? How can we align our lives with the rational order of the universe when we're bombarded with so many distractions, demands, and temptations in the modern world?
That's a great question, and it's one that I think Aurelius would have wrestled with himself. Remember, for the Stoics, living in accordance with nature wasn't about literally retreating to the wilderness or rejecting all modern conveniences. It was about understanding our place in the grand scheme of things, recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings, and living in a way that's both virtuous and conducive to the greater good.
So it's about finding a balance between our individual needs and the needs of the larger community.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're not isolated individuals, but rather part of a larger web of life. And our actions, however small they may seem, have an impact on the world around us.
Okay, so how can we bring this principle into our daily lives? What are some practical ways we can live in accordance with nature in the 21st century?
Well, for starters, we can begin by cultivating a sense of mindfulness and awareness of the impact of our actions. We can ask ourselves, how might my choices affect others? How can I contribute to creating a more just and compassionate world?
It's also about cultivating a sense of gratitude for the interconnected web of life that sustains us.
Absolutely. We can practice gratitude for the air we breathe, the food we eat, the people in our lives, and the countless other beings and systems that make our existence possible.
And we can make choices that reflect our understanding of our interconnectedness, such as choosing sustainable products, supporting ethical businesses, and advocating for social justice.
Exactly. It's about aligning our actions with our values and recognizing that even small acts of kindness, compassion, and responsibility can have a ripple effect, contributing to a more harmonious and fulfilling world for all.
It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind and forget about these bigger philosophical ideas. But reading the Meditations has really been a reminder to slow down, to reflect, and to think about what kind of life I want to live.
I think that's a really important takeaway. Aurelius wasn't writing the Meditations to create a rigid set of rules or to preach at people. It was his own personal journey to make sense of life, to wrestle with his own flaws, and to strive for a life of virtue. And I think there's something incredibly inspiring about that.
Absolutely. It's like he's giving us permission to be imperfect, to stumble, to question, to keep striving even when we fall short.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that philosophy isn't just for academics or intellectuals. It's for all of us, for anyone who's trying to figure out how to live a good life, how to navigate the challenges of human existence, and how to find meaning and purpose in a world that can often feel chaotic and unpredictable.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Meditations, What final thought would you leave our listeners with?
I would say this. Don't be intimidated by the idea of philosophy. Don't think you need to be an expert to find value in the meditations. Just pick it up, read a few passages, and see what resonates with you. You might be surprised at how relevant and applicable these ancient ideas can be to your own life, your own struggles, and your own search for meaning and purpose.
It's a reminder that the pursuit of wisdom and a good life is a journey, not a destination. And it's a journey that we can all embark on, regardless of our background, our circumstances, or our perceived level of philosophical knowledge.
Exactly. And it's a journey that's filled with challenges, setbacks, and triumphs. But it's a journey that's ultimately worth taking, for it leads to greater self-awareness, resilience, and fulfillment.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We hope you found it insightful and empowering. And remember, like Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one.
That's great advice to end on. Thanks for having me.